Welcome everyone to the, what month is it? August Focus Friday. You got myself and Renee. Hi, Renee.
Hi.
Let's see. One thing I want to talk about before we get started is we have our upcoming Summit Roadshow, which is going to be in New York. We've had 3 so far: Boston, Arlington, and Chicago. I was fortunate enough to go to Arlington and Chicago. If you're planning to go, please register. You must register in order to be able to attend. So you click on the link. It's at ibi.com/events to get to this page. You want to make sure you're clicked on in-person events and then go to the Summit Roadshow Series, New York City. All right. All right, let's just jump in. Let me stop this and I'll start the next one. So today I want to talk about when you do a table request and that table request goes against a relational database. If
We're
you're
not seeing your screen.
No, I'm getting it up. So I'm
Oh, okay.
kind of chatting
Got
as I'm
it.
getting
Sorry.
it up.
Uh,
Let's close that. So now you should see something.
yes, we do. Thank you.
Okay.
Focus the SQL. Yeah.
Close that a little bit. All right, so if you're running a table request against a relational data source, I'm going to show you in the traces how you can turn the traces on, and then how you can look at the translated SQL from the focus code so that you can kind of hopefully get what you think you're getting. All right. So let's just jump in. What is SQL? Well, SQL is a language used by most relational database sources. Some of the code is generic across databases. Some of them are specific. So there might be some functions, say in Oracle, that you can't use in SQL, SQL Server, or something like MySQL. You can select, insert, update records. And this is a simple select statement. So simple, you're selecting a column, you're doing an aggregation, so you're using a sum prefix from your table, any filtering conditions, and then if you're doing an aggregation, you need a group by any non-aggregated fields. So in this case, column 1 doesn't have an aggregation on it. There's no sum or max or anything on it. So it's considered non-aggregated. So you need a group by all non-aggregated fields. And then finally, we have the order by. To see your traces, you're going to have to do some trace command settings prior to running your query. All right, so the first one here, I'm doing a set trace off equals all. That basically says any traces that were already defined as on, I want you to turn them off. Now, why are we doing that? When you start Web Focus or Focus, there's a certain set of traces that are defaulted on. So if I didn't turn all of them off first, and if I go to the second to last step where it says set trace user equals on, I am going to see all of that additional trace information. So it's not like I'm only going to be able to see what I'm asking for in this query, but I'm going to see everything that was already predefined. So we set trace off equals all, and then we're going to set trace on SQL AGGR, which is the aggregation. Yeah. So this will let you know if the query was optimized. And if it wasn't, then it'll tell you why it couldn't optimize it. And we'll see that it'll have a statement that says query was aggregated. And that kind of means that it was optimized. / client basically says I want to put this in the view source. So if you're running and going to HTML output and you right click and do a view source, you'll see the traces in the view source. The second one, the STM trace, is the actual translated select statement. So if you're doing a table file, you will see a select statement equivalent. Set trace stamp equals off. You might not have seen that previously. That will turn off the date stamp because all of our traces have a date stamp in the first column identifying when this was done. If you turn it off, then you can physically copy and paste the select statement that was generated into a native relational query tool like Toad, and then just make sure that the query is giving you back the information that you're expecting. Lastly, X retrieval off. What that will do is it will process the request. It will generate the translated SQL, but it will not physically bring back any data. So why is that important? I have a table, I'm expecting millions of rows. If I just want to check and see that my SQL statement, my select statement was correct, I don't want to bring back all those millions of rows. I just want to bring back the select statement. So turning X retrieval, this external retrieval, off, then we'll process it, you'll get your trace, but no physical data will be transferred. Okay, so this goes over everything I basically said. There's the aggregation done message if everything looks good and was passed to the relational database engine. The database adapter is able to pass all join, sort, and aggregation operations. Now, there are some functions that we have in the focus world that will not translate, but the majority of them will. And if you're using what we call simplified functions, those should all translate. Okay, the HTML trace, this is just reiterating that you're going to see the select statement. If you were doing a delete, if you're doing a modify and you're doing a delete from a DB2 table, you would see the SQL delete statement. Or if you're doing an update, the update. Okay. So in this example, I have two focus files that I translated into into SQL. So I have empdata, which I translated to empdataQ, which is my relational version, and I'm using MySQL. So I have my master file and my access file, and I didn't have a training. I have a training queue also, which I'm going to also show you because I wanted to show you an example of a join. So simple, very basic table request. Table file empdataQ, print last name, first name, end. So when I run this, because it's relational, I should see some select statement translation. And this is what I get. Aggregation not done for the following reason. Aggregation is not applicable to the verb used. So what's my verb? I'm doing a print. Print is detail. That's not an aggregation. But if I look at my select statement, I see I have select ln fn from empdataQ. So I have my first name, my last name, and the table name. So I color coded, so everything should match along. So you have your print verb objects, and in your select, you have select verb objects. You have table file name, you have from file name. All right. Let's spice it up a bit, and we're going to sort by department. I get the same message, and now I see that C depth is also in the code, and I have an order by. All right. Here I'm changing the print to a sum. I'm summing the count of pin and salary by department. Now I get the message aggregation done. Great, everything got moved over, and I can see that my select is bringing back CDEPT, a count star, and a sum CSAL. Notice now that since I have the aggregation and I have non-aggregated fields, I also have a group I added. Okay, let's say you're doing a compute. Will the compute pass, or will focus do the work, the calculation, or will it get passed over to the relational database engine? Well, let's see. We got aggregation done. I see that we're getting department back. We're getting the count and the sum, but I don't see anything talking about average salary. So this tells me we're going to bring the data values back, and we're going to do the calculation on the focus side. If I do a define, So it's the same calculation, or I'm sorry, it's different calculation, new sal, but I moved it from a compute to a define. Notice now the define does pass. So new sal is the C sal times 1.03, just like in the definition. Okay, any questions? Okay, I'm going to add a filter where department equals sales, and we're just going to add to what we've already had. We also have in the focus world a where total. So where total says where the aggregated value for the salary at the buy level. So at the lowest buy level. So in this case, at the department level, we only want to see departments where the total salary for the entire department is greater than 50,000. And again, I'm limiting it to Department of Sales. So in the relational world, they have an equivalent of a halving. So this goes after the group by because everything has to be aggregated at that point, and it's having a sum of C sal greater than 50,000 at the group level. All right. A lot of times you want to see if you have a record that exists in another table. So what I'm looking for here is I pretty much have the same query we started with, but now I'm saying where DB underscore in file training Q. So I want to know if the pin from emp data, which is the first pin, if there's a matching pin in the training file. So if you guys are familiar with SQL, this will then translate as a where in, and then there's a select ID from training Q. We also have some newer things you can do where you can create a hold file as an SQL script. So it doesn't bring back any physical data, but it will create a select statement that you can then use, say, in a join and join to the subselect. That I do not have an example of. But maybe later we'll do more like more in-depth on joins and how they relate to relational or focus managed. Okay, that should not say we're in file. I must have opened up my wrong. I opened the wrong one. Give me 1 second. No, that should be the right one. All right. So this should be when you do a define, and I'm doing a range here. I'm doing salary range A10. If salary is greater than 50,000, then high. Else, if salary is greater than 1,000, then medium, else low. So it's kind of like a waterfall type of thing. If I put in my where statement where salary range equals high, when I run this and it's all relational, look at what happens. In my where statement, I created a case, or the translator created a case that says when T1 CSAL is greater than 5,000, then high, when blah, blah, blah is then medium, else low, where that phrase is equal to high. So now you're only getting back the one value that you're looking for. So this is interesting. We already did where total. Where in file. All right, so this is where I forgot to delete some slides. So where on define is what this where salary range equals high. And we get that. So then I added a join. So join pin in emp data to pin in training as J1. I basically want to see who in the accounting department took a course. So if I run this, I get my select, I get the fields I'm selecting. I have the ones from T1 and T2. So T2 is the course code. From notice I have my two tables now, emp data queue T1, comma, training T2, where T2 ID equals T1 ID. So that's the join between the two tables. So my question is this an inner join or an outer join? Or left outer join? Well, since the where is happening not as part of the from, then this is going to be an inner join. So you're only going to get records where both of them match. As opposed to if I want to do a left outer join, you have to explicitly state left outer in your join statement. And now you'll see in your from, we have from the first table and then the word left outer join to the second table with an on predicate. So the difference being the inner will show me only the people who took courses and what courses they took. And this one will show me everybody, whether they took a course or not. And if they didn't take a course, it'll show up as missing. And that's it for me. Any questions on the translation? And I hear the crickets. We have one question here. All right. Alex, you have a question? Do you want to put it in the chat? Or do you want, let's see if I can. What happens? All right, so we have another question. Wait, one over there. QA. What happens if a defined function doesn't translate? So when you do a defined function, you're basically creating definitions. That's a good question. I'm gonna have to check that out. Because as long as your defines, the individual expressions can translate, then I would expect your defined function to translate. But again, it's an external process. So we're calling the function. So I don't know if it's going to really know exactly what's happening within the function. If you have a specific example, so John, if you have a specific example, if you can open a case and say that you brought it up at the Focus Friday and put my name in it, then I'll take a look at it. How the focus join will be translated. All right, so let me go back. All right, so in this case, I have just a basic join field in file to field in file, and it translates as an inner join. And if I'm doing a left outer, it will translate and have the host file and then a left outer and then the cross-reference file. All right, so Alex is saying set X retrieval equals none is a better setting. It allows to skip initialization of the adapter and none works faster. All right, so in my relational settings, so let's go back there. So on these settings, the last one I was talking about was the X retrieval. X retrieval off says, go through the process and do the translation and then bring me back, or don't go physically out to get the data. Just show me what you translated. There's also a setting X retrieval equals none. The none says, so it's none, N-O-N-E. None basically says, don't do any adapter stuff. Assume everything's okay and then just do the translation. So that's why it works much faster. If I do the off, it's still going to try to look for the physical adapter and make sure that everything's going on and the way it should be. Thanks, Alex. For those of you who might not have worked with Alex, he's part of our engineering team. All right. Okay, I think I got everybody. All right. I'm going to stop sharing. And Renee, I give you 5 minutes on this end.
I'll take it.
All right, let me stop the share.
So we're going to pick up from last month's introduction to designer pages. And at that time, I had discussed and we reviewed assemble visualizations. And we also discussed that there is a different mechanism for creating pages, which are authored pages, where you go into designer visualizations and you convert that visualization to a page. That's an authored page from new content. The feature that I'm talking about is creating it from existing content. There are definitely differences between the two. But I believe that assemble visualization gives you more robust capabilities, but there are some differences. So just as a quick overview for what we did the last time, just to level set some individuals that might not have had a chance to attend the last session or listen to it, just as a quick overview, I'm going to navigate right to plus assemble visualizations, and we'll start one up. And we usually pick a blank template. Certainly there are other templates available to you that can set things up ahead of time for you, but I like blank because it gives you the ability to customize it however you see fit in terms of the page that you're developing. And we're in now assemble visualizations mode. We have our page canvas and everything. We talked about the toolbar, the visualization bar, and we reviewed everything. So the very first thing I want to do is content. I want to navigate to the content that I want to add to this page. And I'm going to do so into this area. And I did for this very first introduction with car. And I created some simple reports. The very first one, I just double click, bring it in. It's a simple car report with country and car farms. And I actually showcased one of my favorite features that I don't believe enough people are aware of, is to see where this content is coming from. Obviously, I navigated there. I was able to pull it in. But there's this little button up here called an info button. And if you click it, it actually tells you the reference path. You can even copy it here with the little copy path button if you want, the data source, and the parameters that are available within that content that you added to the page. So I can see I have DFWH country and DFWH car. You can tell with those names that I created this content in Designer. And those are the two parameters that are available. And you'll also notice here on the sidebar, the filters. Right now I'm on content, but if I go to filters, you'll see that little purple icon that the moment I click it, it clears off. And it tells me I have country and car as parameters that I can add to this page. Now, before I do that, I wanted to also add some additional content that had different parameters available to you, because when you add filters to the page, the filters apply to the content that it's applicable to, right? So if I have additional content, so I add car report 2, and adding that, I'm leaving the info button right now so we can just see the parameters. I see a country car, but I also have WFMT for the format, report format, like HTML, PDF, etc. Notice that the little filters icon was updated and that there's an additional filter now, select an output type, because that's coming from the content and the messaging. But that certainly can be changed, of course, when we add this filter. And then I want to add one other piece of content. And this was a report that just only has country. So right now, just looking at the content that we have available and we've added to this page, country is in all 3 pieces of content that it would apply to. Car applies to the first and the second. And then WFMT only applies to the second report. And car, the report 3, the one on the bottom here, country is the only applicable filter to that one. So if you change car, it's not going to impact it. Only country will impact that piece of content. Okay, so I know I'm going a little quick because this, again, is a review. You see the purple icon is there. You see it didn't really add anything because the parameters are the same. It's just letting you know you added additional content here. And right now, you can see they're grayed out, which means the content, the filters have yet to be added to the page. In fact, we have enabled on the little eclipse show unused filters. It shows it, but if you just unclick it, you can see that there are 3 unused, meaning they haven't been applied to the page yet. So if I wanted to add them all to the page, and that's the quickest and easiest way, I certainly can do that, and it'll default based on those types, whether they're multi-select, single-select, date, how they'll get added to the page as filters. Or if I wanted to, I could right-click and add to the page individually, and it'll default, or add to page as. Because country and car are going to be multi-select, they give you drop-down, checkbox, button set, toggle, and double list. For a single select, you would get a radio and you wouldn't see the double list. And in fact, that's with the output format. If I check that one, you'll see you only get those options. And in the last session that we had, one of the questions was, and someone beat me to the punch, there are some where you only get add to a page, and that's like a date. So if you have a date filter, usually you'll only see the add to page option because date is a date. There isn't different control. There is a mechanism and option to change that control the way it looks, whether you get the date picker or not, or the custom picker, or you get the date picker directly, but that's on the control itself as a property versus changing the control of the control types here. And if you wanted to see the control types, there's a whole bunch, right? But you have the ability to change the filters when you bring them into the page to add them in. I like to just add them all in directly. So I'm going to add them all in, just click add all filters to the page. And when I do that, you can see they're all highlighted in boxes. That's just the way they come default. I can click outside of that. You know, wherever you have your blue bar is where you're focused on, and that controls contextually what you'll see here in the settings and format. One thing I like to point out is the outline really truly is your friend. If you notice, I click here with the filter bar, I get to the filter bar. To control the entire filter. Maybe I don't want the 4-column default. So because I'm at the filter bar level, I can actually change that to 3 columns if I wanted to. That's certainly valid. These are the options that you have. If I wanted to add a different type of container, maybe I have a very complex page, and while I have filters at the filter bar at the top, maybe there's a few pieces of content that have additional filters that I want to have a grid added to it. I could add a grid container. If you do that, you can't really navigate to get to this point, but you can through the outline if you need to control the columns. I know that's something customers see all the time, and I think in another demonstration for next month I can go into that a little more detail, but I wanted to mention it here. If you create a grid panel and you're trying to get to this part, the way to do it is to go to the outline to where that grid panel is and click the filter bar option, and then you will be able to go to format and grid type and control it. Just something to be aware of. I think it's important, and it does come up in support. So here's our content, here's our filter. So all our filters have been added, and you can see the types of, if I concentrate, like if I'm in the cell, in fact, let me come back to the outline. Here, if I'm in the cell, right, it says filter cell here as an ID. That's not the actual filter true control. That's just the cell that the filter lives in. The actual filter is when you see filter panel with the ID. So you see how the border doesn't quite go around the whole piece. Then you know you're at the filter level, and you'll see that you have the type of filter here. You can see country is multi-select, car is multi-select, and then we have the output format drop down here as well, and that's a single select actually. Let me come back to country. We talked about, you know, how you could have a tooltip here. And if I were to just say something like, you know, countries or something like that, you know, I could type. And then if I hover over, you'll see that that tooltip is there. I did mention the global name is very important when you're putting these pages into a portal, right? And you need the filters apply from one page to another filter on another page. It's the same filter. The way you do it through connecting those pages, otherwise they won't impact it. The filter impacts the page that it lives on. If you have multiple pages and you want that filter to impact those multiple pages, the way you do it is via a global name that will be the same across those filters. It's one way to do it. Talked about optional, right? If optional is unchecked, then you have a red bar, and when you run this, you have to supply a selection in order for it to run. So I'll just do a real quick. In fact, I still have the info button going, but here, let me just run it real quick, just so that you can see it's make selection, and then if I just pick something, then it'll run, right? You also have the ability to put a placeholder, you know, enter a value or something like that, enter a country value or something, but you get the idea. And then if I do that, and I run it, you can see the text here. If I don't want to see that text, and actually if I check this, it'll keep what I have there as text if I want to flip back and forth. But if I uncheck it and I clear it out, just clear it out and empty it, it'll go back to the default of make a selection. I'll go back and add optional. Yes?
Renee? There's a question.
Yes.
Can you have your filter bar go down the page instead of across? And
Yes,
I believe there's
can,
a setting
absolutely.
for that, right?
Yes. So the way you can do it is through alignment. If you get to the filter where the styles and everything, there's styling here, but there's the ability to change it whether or not you want it to go. So if I wanted it like as a single column, I could do it that way. If that's the question.
No, I think he wants it to go straight. I think he wants it to go straight down.
Well, the filter bar to go straight down, you control it by columns. It takes up the whole space. If you don't want it to go across the whole page, then the way you would deal with that would be to create a different container, a grid style container to do that.
Got it.
Okay,
Thank you.
But I could demonstrate more in another session. There's a lot to cover, but I do understand there's rows that you can control, certainly, and as well as columns. Columns tends to be the big one, but if you want to control it and not have it take the whole page space, the way you would do that is through a grid container, and then you control how you do that, and then how many columns across and how many rows as well. Actually, let me come back here because I want to come back to 3 just to make it a little bit easier. Okay, so we have our filters here going across, and one of the things that I thought was extremely important, and I kind of want to stress this, is you have classes, right? We talk classes is for JavaScript, very important. If you're going to do any kind of JavaScript, custom JavaScript coding, the class will apply to that filter. You want to do it on the filter panel level. Search selections capability. I just want to showcase real quick. If you have search only, you'll get the search bar. If you decide to click and you get, selection controls is available when you're on a multi-select. You see it's not there when I'm on a single select control. But when I'm on a multi-select, I have the ability to click selection controls. And if I do that, you'll see the all option gets disabled. And that's because it can be one or the other. They're mutually exclusive. I can do the select all that way if I want to, or clear. The other option is if I decide I want to show all, it'll disable the selection control. So just to be aware that those are interconnected with each other. Paging, you can impact how the page is for the control here, right? This is small, but you'll see like when I do WS Retail Lite, that becomes pretty important on how maybe you want it to look. The show all option, it'll display, if I had only a single value, it'll do all in a single value. If this is checked, we did that for legacy, but you can uncheck it and just have the single value display if that's the case. And then that impacts the all display here. And definitely this is a key part here, and I want to be very clear about this, and that's why I wanted to do this quick review too. Let's go to country, and here, this default value, if I decide here to say England, right, you can see it impacts my preview here in Assemble Visualizations, but if I run it, you're going to see all, and you're going to say, wait, I don't understand. When I create visualizations all the time, if I change it in preview, it impacts the filter here. But that's true if it's a single piece of content visualization or if you do an authored page. But an assemble page has a lot more control and a lot more options available to it. And here, if you change it, you're only impacting preview. Where you need to actually change the default value is here within the settings and the data settings for that control, for that filter. So this is really key. And actually what's very cool here, I'm just going to change back to all deliberately for a second here. So I have all here, but the default value is really what gets impacted at runtime. I have the ability here, in 9.3 we changed this. In 9.2 you just have the text box and you could type in a value or a global variable. But in 9.3 we gave you the ability, other than I think the date, here you can actually select and edit the value. So here I'm going to come back, I'm going to click the edit button, and I can actually pick the value. So let's say I say England and France. Okay, notice that the default value is impacted here, and in 9.2 you just put one value, but here you have multiple values. You can select through that And you notice it impacted the preview filter here too. But now when I run it, voila, I could see it actually impacts at runtime as well. Very important. And just to showcase that you also have the ability, I could say, let me bring that back. I don't want those values. I want to add a global variable. And I happen to have one called DefCat that I have set up with defined category. Actually, I'll do that on WF Retail Lite. If I do it now, it's not going to match up, but you could actually see it. If I wanted to showcase it, you could see here. It's not going to show up because there's nothing that matches up, but I'll do that on the other one. But I just wanted to show you that you could have a global variable there as well. Let me just clear that out, just to getting ahead of myself from the other presentation I want to pick up from. So let me just say, okay. So that's very important. The last thing I want to go through is the binding and the filters, right? So you notice when I picked England, and everybody on this, I know this knows the car file, I'll see all of the car values, right? Because car doesn't have hierarchies built into the synonym, into the master file description. So because of that, I'm seeing all the car values. Now, say I really do want it to be a hierarchy. I want it to respect that. I have the ability within the tool to take just, and make sure you just highlight it on the one. So I'm on car, and car is the only one highlighted. If I take that and I drag it on top of country, you'll notice now that car is nested within country. In fact, if I collapse country, you won't see car anymore. That is now have established a hierarchy between the two. As easy as that. Now, with England selected here, you'll see it only has the cars associated with England, right? That's important. I just want to, and then if I want to, I can actually unbind it. I can unchain it from the parent, or I can do it from country and I can unchain it, all the children. Well, let's just do it and unfilter it from the parent. It will put it on the bottom, but the order here doesn't matter. Your filters will stay where they are on the page. But now you'll see with England, I have all of them selected, right? All of the car values are available to me. So I'm going to come back on all. And one last thing I wanted to do is just run this, is just the way it is, just as a last minute thing, is I see I have car, right, all right, is applied, all the countries, all the cars and everything. Let me just say I want England and just pick England, right? So now I could see it had the impact correctly on all the reports. And in fact, now I'm going to pick car. Remember, they're unchanged at this point. Toyota. And now you can see these are empty reports, right, with just their heading, their titles and everything. But here you can see this report, this piece of content does have it. Why? Because the filter, only country applies to that piece of content. So where your filter applies is important. And it's just, like I said, I created different pieces of content that had different filters just so that you could see that impact. One other question that came up from the last time is, I had this HTML, and if, let's say I changed it, well, actually, let's just put back all, just to get some output there, and change this to PDF. I see PDF, and then there was a mention with XLSX, and you can see that I can keep that, and it created it, and I'm not going to open it up. I don't have the spinner happening here, and the reason for that is because if I come back here and I go to the administration console and I look at the redirection settings, I have XLSX set redirect to yes. If your redirect is no, then what will happen, just to come back, is you will get the spinner here. So I just wanted to mention that because it did come up as a question. But if your redirect is set to yes, you won't see that. So I know I talked a lot about review, and this is all important stuff. I think the most important thing is to realize you bring content in very easily. You can add the filters in easily. You can just an understanding the bindings. That's really kind of what we talked about, and that filters can have different content that's available to it and impact the display of that content. Not every filter that's on the page might be impacting every piece of content that's on that page. And the way to know what's available to you is really that info button. It really does make all the difference, I think, in understanding your content and the parameters that are associated, the filters that are associated with those pieces of content.
Renee.
So I'm going to close this up. Yes.
Doug has a question. Can you please show where that redirect setting is found again?
Oh, sure. Let me come back. Your administration console. configuration, and if you scroll down past the application settings and all of that, there's a redirection settings here. You bring this up. I had it already up just to make it a little easier because it could take a little time to display, and you can see that XLSX. You can see the redirect says TS. Hopefully that answers it. I'm going to come back, and I'm going to start because, as you know, I do take a long time trying to cram in so much information because I'm really excited about this. I think it's very cool, and I think once you're exposed to it, you're going to want to use it and leverage it all the time. So I'm going to come back into assemble visualizations, but now I'm going to pick up, instead of something as simple as car, I'm going to come in as a blank template. I'm going to pick up content from, it's a little bit different. This was older content that actually was created in InfoAssist, so it's certainly valid and works, and that's why I like to utilize it. And it's all against the reporting object against WF Retail Lite that has a whole bunch of variables set to it. So I'm going to pull in automatically. I'm just going to start bringing in, I'm going to bring in category sales. Right away, you can see I got the little purple icon there. Filters are already available. If I click my little button here, I can see right. There's the filters. And also, of course, if I click filters, I'll see it as well. I'm going to add, let's see, revenue by month and category. And so you can see that they all have the same filter, so I'll leave it for that so you can actually see the display. And then let me pick something else, like average cost versus revenue, scatter, diagram, chart. And then let's see, revenue product bar. Okay, very cool. Very similar to what I just demoed, but car was, you know, this is more charts, but, you know, and again, those are designer. Here's InfoAssist proving that you'll be able to leverage and utilize any either or. You can see I have the ability to add all the filters to the page. Of course, I can go through. Notice that category, right? Ooh, right away, you're seeing unchained to all child filters should tell you right away, wait, this is chained. Let me come back here. And I can see, I know sometimes it's a little hard to see, right? So you know the filters haven't been added to the page, right? Because you see the little grayed out icons. But you notice not everything is at the same level. Product model is not. If I actually collapse category, you won't see product model, but all the rest are at the same level, meaning all the rest are unchained, but category is chained to product model. Now, if you know anything about WF Retail Lite, I'll come in over here just because I already showcased it. I'm in the WF Retail Lite master file description. I search for folder equal product, and so you can see there's product category, product subcategory, and model. Now, this one doesn't have the product subcategory in it, but model is within a hierarchy within product category, so it naturally, the tool picks it up. And that's what I wanted to showcase. There's hierarchies there. You can leverage it. Based on your filters, it certainly will leverage it. Now, you also have the capability, if you want, to say, hey, I want to unbind this, but I don't want to do that. But you certainly can do that. That's certainly valid and expected. So, and one other thing to answer the question of that I mentioned it before, that was a question, notice that dates add to pages only. That's the only option that you have. But for a single select, you'll see like the radio, you won't have the double list. But for a multi-select, you will have the checkbox and the double list in addition to the other items. So I'm just, for ease of use, I'm going to add all the filters to the page. I'm going to also double click in the page heading because I'm just going to say, you know, like retail demo page, to give it some title. And we talked about all the features like show page heading. You want to do an initial load, whether or not I want that page toolbar, the refresh options, include page filters or not, that type of thing. I do want the filters, obviously. It's an important piece. Now, again, if I wanted to unbind this, I could unbind product model, and it certainly would unchain it from category, and then it wouldn't be influenced by that filter. I want to go again through the options here to be really clear about with product categories and multi-select. Now, I added it to the page already. I have the real cool capability, if I want, to right-click and say convert. And if I do that, I can convert to the options that I could have added it to the page at. Maybe here I want to make it as a checkbox. But now I kind of like it the way it was, so I'm going to convert it back to a drop down. Product model is also, but it's a long list of values and everything. Maybe that might make sense to convert that more to a double list. And when I click that, you can see the impact. I'll convert that back to the drop down. For region only has a few values. Maybe for region, I'll convert and maybe make it a button list, you know, and that's certainly valid as well. And you can change format and direction, make that vertical or horizontal if you want. That's certainly valid. But I'm going to come back and convert that to a drop down. And then for store type only has 2 values plus all. So maybe that might be something where I want to convert that maybe to a toggle button. Or maybe, you know, I want to see that as a button set, or I could have did it as a radio, but I'm going to come back and put that back as a drop down. But I want to show you how easy it is to do that type of conversion. Then also dates, right? Important thing with date is you get the custom date picker. Here is where you have the option where you can say, I'm going to cancel out of that and say, maybe right here is the control where when you're on that filter and it's a date component, I can say, enable advanced date options is checked, but I can disable it and then I'll come right to the date picker. So you do have that option to control it, something you wouldn't have with an authored page. But another thing is maybe I want this to be a date range. I have the ability that if I shift and click and get both of them where I see a blue border on both, I can right click now and combine. And if I do that, now I'll see I have a date range. And also you have the option for start of the week to set whether it's Sunday, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday. And then I can set default values as well. In fact, here with date, it's a little different. You don't have like the edit option. You can pick the date from the calendar, or I'm just going to do something as simple as this. And I'm going to say I have global variables like prior 30 days. And then amper yesterday. Cool. Just to showcase that you have that kind of ability to control it even from a global level. So I'll let that run, but I'm going to just wipe it out and just say, hey, that's not what I want. But I wanted to showcase that, and you still have the enable advanced date options even if it's a range. Another thing
Renee?
is maybe I don't want. Yes.
Sorry. Is there any JS function that would address the spinner, like to turn it on and off on demand? They would like to tie it to other interaction roles.
Not that I'm aware of, but it's something that, you know, I know that was discussed with product management. I can follow up on that. I know who's asking that question. I'm pretty sure. So, yeah, I follow up on that. But right now, I'm not aware of anything that will address that. But it's a good point, and I'll certainly follow up on that. Okay. Just with the date range, just to, if you want to change the title on something like that, you can also here usually double click as well here. But I like to do it here. It's just my thing. And I'll go to the end and say from to, and maybe make it a little nicer like that. So you can see the impact there. Also, I want to go to the outline, the filter bar. I want to change it, and I want to make it 3 columns here. Another piece, and I know I'm running short on time as always. Another great thing is here when you add things, you have a section already. If you click in the section, and it'll be section 1 by default as the first section, and then you can add another one. You can make this collapsible if you want, and you'll get that little collapsible icon, and you can see you can collapse it or expand it if that's something you want to do. Another thing is if you right-click when you're on the section, you can actually have the ability to insert a section above or below it. I'm going to insert another section below. Now you're going to see I'm going to be able to, and I have a section 2 here in the outline. And what I want to do is I want to add some additional content here. I'm going to drag in revenue region bar. Actually, and I'm going to expand it in that section. And now you can see, if I look at the outline, you can see here, revenue region bar, and I'll let it run. And actually what I want is I want additional content. So right now I showcased content that was just single pieces of content in the containers, but I can actually drag something in by something like, let's say, discount by region, right onto that. And it can say, do you want to replace it? I could replace it. I can cancel it, or I have this little drop down. I can actually add it, and it could be multiple content. Let's say I want it as an accordion, or it could be a slide or a tab. I'll put accordion first. And if I highlight that, I can also say, hey, maybe I don't want to see the title or enable the toolbar, but I'll keep that there for now. And you can see now I can just go through the accordion and display what I want. That's a way to leverage your page with a lot of content within a single piece, a single container. And then you have the ability to add another one here as well and go or right click and do that as well. But what I'm going to do here is if I click, I can say I can convert this, just like we can convert the filter. If you say basic, it's going to create separate containers for you. They break it out instead of multiple content. I could also do carousel. And if I do carousel, then you can actually rotate to when you run this. And there's even an autoplay setting. So right now, if I go through, I can click through and provide that option. Or I can have it autoplay. If there's anything other than 0 here, let's say 15, then you can say whether or not you want that content to be rerun every time when it autoplays. You might not or you're not, but you have that option. That's with using the carousel. But the moment you have 0 back there, then that gets disabled to rerun the content. But it will rerun, of course, if you change the filters on the page. So that's one thing. But here, I don't want that. I don't even want that. I want to change it to tab. I'll have tabs where I can go through. And again, while that's running, you can see I have the outline now, and you can see that that piece has 2 pieces of content within there displayed as well. So let's just say I want to showcase in the little bit of time that I have left is some interaction. And we can pick up from this on the next session, but let's say region. With region, if it's all, I want to display this. But if it's not all, if I select one or more, the values, like what do I want? Do I want to see this whole section? I actually want to hide it. So the way I can do that is with an interaction. Now there is an interaction button up here, but a nice easy way is on the control where you want the interaction to impact is you can actually right click on it and they say interaction and add. It saves you a few steps if you do it this way. So selection change is your only option for this. And then you'll get a task. And what do I want to do? I want to hide an object. And what object do I want to hide? I want to actually hide this section. And for what you can reference, you'll see then the OK button will be available to you. If you try to pick something that you can't hide, then it won't come available to you. But that's saying the whole section. I certainly could have just said the container, but that section would be available, and any content also in that section would still be displayed, and I would just be hiding that one piece. But I like to do that because this is a very useful way to maybe control your page and the display if you need to do so. So I'm going to say hide section 2. And it's a great way to see interactions. I'm going to hide section 2. Now, if I just run this the way it is, I mean, it was as simple as that. Now I'm going to scroll down, right? So it is loading. But the moment I just set a selection change, it could be anything that gets hidden. There's no way right now, I haven't even accounted for bringing it back or whether or not it's a specific value that allows for it. So I also want to be able to showcase this as well. So I need another task anyway. So let me say show object, and I'm going to want to be able to show that section too. Okay, great. I have a hide and I have a show, but it's a little bit more than that. I want to hide it when it's not, when that region is not equal to all, but I want to show it when it does equal all. So if you click on the task, certain things have capabilities of adding a condition. We can add a condition to this. And here it'll bring up the task condition dialog, and you say, what control do you want to add? I want to do it for region. And when it's not equal to one of, and this is a multi-select if you have multiple values here. And then I'm going to say when it's all. It's really as simple as that. So there's my control, not equal to all, and I want to hide it. I don't want to see it. But on this one, I'm going to add a condition, and I'm going to say, hey, for region, if it equals all, then I want to show it. All right. So let me just see if I did everything right. I don't have to wait for everything to load, but just so that you can see, I'll scroll down. And you can see that that section is there with that content with the revenue region bar and the discount by region. And here now, if I change region to something like North America, you can see now you don't see that section anymore. I only see the 4 containers that were in the top section 1. But now, and I can let that go, but just to save on time, if I say all now, scroll down, you can see the section comes back. Very simple and easy way to control, and again, just showing you navigation. Now, Walter, do you think I have like 5 more minutes?
Certainly.
Point. Okay. All right. And you know I'm going to take it. I'm sorry. I know. I have so much that I want to show you guys. I can't help it. So here, I want to do something separate. I want to add a separate control. So we showed an interaction at a very basic level. And I know that was quick, and we can review next time. But I want to take a drop down, which is a control that's unbound to anything. And with this control, it doesn't have any values yet. But if I'm here and I click with that control, I have this where it says control source. I can actually create values for that drop down. Now, they can be dynamic and picked up from some source, synonym, or procedure. But here I'm just going to create a static list. And here I'm just going to say the actual, I'm just going to ACS, and I'll just say average cost B sales. And then I'm going to add another row. It's as simple as that, clicking that button, right? Regional RTS, just for something for value, and then regional trend sales, something like that. And I'm going to click OK. Well, great. I created this. You can see now this updated. It says static list, 2 values. I can edit it again if I want. And just cancel out. And I can see the drop down has some values, but they really have no meaning, right? They're not connected to do anything yet. What do I want to do here? Well, what I want to do with that drop down that I just created is I want to replace the content in the container for revenue by month and category. So now I can right click on that and I can interaction add, or I can go through extra steps through the interaction button, but you do it right there. It makes it a little bit easier. Now I'm going to have a second interaction. You can rename these, and I highly recommend that you do that. We can do that next time. But here it's just selection change is your only option. What do I want to do? I want to run content. So I have run, show, hide, run deferred, schedule, and you can execute a JavaScript function. I'm going to run content. And here, I'm going to navigate to where I want to run that content from, and I'm going to pick average cost B sales and select a target, a container. And what container do I want to pick up? Well, I want to replace the revenue by month and category. If I pick here, you notice you don't get the OK at the higher level, but the actual container content, it will let you do that. So then you click OK. And that's where the blue border is very important, understanding contextually where you're at. So now I have a task to run that content, and then I'm going to add another task, run content. And what do I want to run? I'm going to go and navigate again. And this one, I'll pick the regional trends, sales trends. That's what I wanted. And again, I'm going to select the targeted container, and I'm going to select the same container to replace that. And you can see the blue border again. Okay. And now, just like we saw with the show and hide on the region filter, the task, I can actually add conditions. So I want to be able to add a condition on the first one, and for the drop-down one, and you can rename that, and it'll get propagated across everything here. And when it equals the average cost v sales, I want to run this task, which will take this content and replace it with the average cost v sales. And then I want to do the same thing for task 2. I'm going to pick that drop-down one, and I'm going to say the regional trend sales. And now, when I pick that, it'll run this piece of content. So let me just showcase that. And now we have our drop-down one. And I'll just let it load for this part of it. Okay, so we can see the revenue by month and category. And then now, if I click average cost v sales, you can see it replaces the content here. And then I can do regional trend sales, and it'll replace the content there as well. Now, one thing I'd like to do is come back to that original content so I can add another thing, another option in that drop-down to come back and display the revenues by month and category, and we can pick that up for the next time. One thing I want to make a point of is when you run content like this, when you initially run it, it will, it's not going to apply the filters that are on the page. So let me just showcase this real quick in the last minute that I have. Let's say I pick category computers. Now, you notice this is running right now, so it's replacing this because this content is currently on the page, and that filter isn't impacting that because it is the filter on that content that's the same filter, so it impacts it, okay? And in fact, this content, these pieces of content that I added via this dropdown are from the same reporting object, so they have the same filters available to them. So, but now, if I come back here and I change average supposed to be sales, you can see you're getting all of the product categories. Now, of course, if I add something and do something and change one of the filters here, it will impact that as well. So we can pick up that in the next session. So we're definitely going to have a trilogy. I thought 2 sessions wouldn't be enough. That's certainly not. And there's a lot more that I can still go over and talk about. But hopefully I gave you a lot of great information where you can just hit the ground running, but understand some of the nuances and what's available, and understand binding, that you can control that, and understanding just creating some initial interactions and with your filters and everything for your pages. So I hope this was informative, and I think at this point I'll stop sharing.
You have lots of questions.
Lots of questions. What about assembling old visualizations created on Dev Studio and everything? When right now about converting those, they're not there yet. How we'll do those kind of conversions? Definitely, if you have standalone things, there are certain things you can pull in. Definitely from an InfoAssist, absolutely you can, and obviously Designer. Is there any way to globally disable the enable advanced data options? I know that's been requested. Right now there isn't. You have to disable it for the individual pages. Can you add the collapse feature to the filter bar? Great question. It's not there right now. Collapse is strictly available for sections on the page. You have the ability to the show and hide button for the filter. That's what you do have. So I think, did I get done?
There's a couple of things in the chat.
Oh, okay. Let me go to chat real quick. Oh, wow. There's a lot of questions, huh? Holy moly. To address the spinner. Okay, we talked about that. Issue with reset filter button with the default date clears them, but it did not allow for the note. Break filter for the user. I think I would make a case for that one, Mike. Yeah, I definitely knew it was you. Collapse feature. Okay, talked about. Can you hide the section if only one region is chosen but displayed if there are multiple sections? It's either hide or show the whole section, but you don't have to do it at a section level. You can use hide and show at a container level as well. There can be potential challenges with spacing. So I'll try to maybe mention that for the next time. That's why I wanted to follow up. Would a new report from there drop-down be filtered if it was a submit button? Now, a submit button for the page that you added as a submit control does get that gets filtered, right? But if you do a button that's going to go and run some content and everything, it will not use the filters from that page. That's something definitely we're looking to enhance. I know customers have been requesting that kind of capability. So it's great that you're asking that, because that just lets me go back to product management and indicate, hey, we see a lot of expressed interest in that. So hopefully I think I answered at least most, if not all, the questions.
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you. And by the way, let me just say, surveys, please fill out surveys. And if this was informative and interesting, and if you want more of this and what you're looking for, add it to the surveys, because it really, really helps us to say, this is what customers are looking for. And we can schedule accordingly. So thank you. Back to you, Walter. Thank you.
John snuck in one extra question. Would the new report from the dropdown be filtered if there was a submit button?
Well, that was kind of what I was trying to answer with that last thing. With the submit button, the submit button is a submit button on the page. Once you click the submit, anything on that page will get run and utilize the filters. However, if you have like a button type button, then it will not apply the filters to that run content that the button is associated with. If there's more, definitely add it to the survey. I look at them and I will follow up.
All right. Thanks, Renee. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, so this basically concludes the non-mainframe part of the Focus Friday. So everything from here on is going to be mainframe specific. So if you're not a mainframe focus, and it's kind of limited to focus also. If you're not a mainframe focus customer, you might want to drop. If you drop, you'll get a link to fill out the survey, so please do. If you're a mainframe focused customer, stick around and I'm going to show a demo of the new Focus Studio product that we have. So for those of you that aren't staying, thanks for coming and hope to see you next month. I need a little transition music. All right, let's just jump in. So as of 9.3.1, it was kind of in 9.3.0, but we didn't tell anybody it was there. If you tried to download and install 9.3.0, you would have seen an install option for Focus Studio. But officially now, 9.3.1, it's out, it's available. Now the question is, what exactly is it and why would you want it? So I came up with this slide, things you didn't know you needed from IBI Focus. The ability to edit your procedures, Folk execs using Windows editing functions. No more TED. Get out of TED, no more insert, delete, lines, and all that fun stuff. Just whatever you're used to in a text editor, then wouldn't it be great if you could do that? The ability to run your legacy CRT forms from a browser. So a lot of the biggest obstacle of migrating from a Focus to Web Focus was, oh, but I have all these applications that use CRT form. Well, Web Focus does not support CRT form. But wouldn't it be nice if it could? The ability to view HTML, PDF, and XLS output directly. What do I mean by directly? Well, you create those formats now in Focus, you put them to a hold file, and then you have to transfer them to your PC to open them. But wouldn't it be nice if you ran your report and could see the output immediately? The ability to configure adapters via GUI front end. Oh, I need to configure DB2. Oh, well, if you were at the last month's Focus Friday, I showed you how to do that. But there were certain manual things you had to do. Like there were 2 or 3 different files that you had to put entries in. Well, what if I could do it like Web Focus, go to the console and configure my adapter that way and have everything updated the way it needs to be. And then let's see, is this lastly? No. The ability to transfer from your mainframe to your local PC. So again, you need some sort of transfer mechanism, whether it's an IND dollar file directly in TSO and using 3270 emulator, or you need an FTP with an FTP server on your mainframe. And this is one I get frustrated with. I'm sitting in Focus and I create a procedure, and then the next day I try to go and update it, but I don't remember what I called it. So in order for me to see the member list, I have to then exit Focus, go to ISPF, go to 3.4, get my member list, sort by changed, and then go back in. It'd be much nicer if I could just click a column that says sort by date. And then lastly, this is for people that don't really know the language as well, and maybe they're learning. Autocomplete. I want to be able to autocomplete commands when using the editor. So if I start typing TAB, then we'll get predictive texting and you'll see table, and then hopefully be able to then do your code a lot more smoothly. So for my Focus people, this is how you get into Focus traditionally. You have a 3270 session, you go to TSO, ISPF, you run a CList. That CList gets you to the Focus command prompt. You might be familiar with the terminal operator environment window. And if you're using MSO, this is your default environment. You can run a report. Table file car, print country car model, and the output of the report goes into hot screen. Alternatively, we have Focus Studio. Focus Studio is a connection to your mainframe and Focus environment using a browser. So I open my browser, I put in my web address. So I have my mainframe host, in this case, IBI MVS, and you will need to have an open port to get here. And then you get your sign-on screen. Okay, so I have a sign-on screen, which means that all of your security that's being enforced right now, whether it's RACF, ACF2, top secret, so whatever you're using will still be honored. I sign in, and I get what looks like a Web Focus console. We have full app support. So notice on the left side in my applications, I have an MF Keys application, an IBI SAMP, and an MVS app. And then there are more. So you can then configure everything based on an app path, which is configured in one of the configuration files. Everything starting with that app path, so in this case, it's going to be apppath.mfkeys, will then be considered part of the MF Keys application. All right. On this screen, let's see if I can annotate, we have this button, the Focus Terminal Operator Environment. If you click it, now is it going to go away? Let's see. It does not. Let me close that. Nope, still didn't go away. There we go. If you click on that Terminal Operating Environment button, it takes you into what appears like you saw in Focus, Interactive Focus. This is the Terminal Operator Environment, but now you're still within the browser. Note that we did open a second tab. So you can always go back and forth between the two tabs and run things in Focus Studio, or you can run them directly as Focus. I did my table file car, print country car model, and again, I have hot screen. So all the same interactive functionality that you have in Interactive Focus, you have available here. And then this shows you, and I have some code in Create Keys. So when you request new keys, I have a form that you can fill, or that I can fill out in order to generate them a little more easily. And those are all using CRT forms. So now when I run it, I get my full CRT form support. This section on the right is for messages, and you'll generally see the messages that normally go to a sysprint. So if you're running a table, you'll see number of records processed, number of lines output, all that fun stuff. Any type commands, all that will go over there. This is the adapter configuration. So there's a get data on the main screen, and then in this case, I already have DB2 configured and some remote servers. All right, how much time do I got? I got 10 minutes. All right, so I'm going to do a little demo. We'll see how this goes. Let's close that and do a new one. Okay, so I'm going to go to my mainframe. Should ask me to sign in. And I'm in Focus Studio. Yay. So I can run a procedure. So let's go into the sales application, and I'm going to do a new procedure. Table file car. Now notice I said it had predictive typing. Right now in 731, it has to be turned on under the text editor options. but soon it's going to be on by default. And I hit that by accident. So now if I do T for table, notice I get all the commands starting with T. Hit tab, F, tab, car. Well, car is not a keyword, it's a file name, so it didn't come up automatically. Print, country, car, model, end. Now I'm running it, and it comes up here in the console. So the output's direct, it's visual, it's HTML. Let's say I wanted the output to be Excel. I can say on table PC hold, format XLSX. I run it, and notice up on the top here, I have a hold file. It says it's an insecure download, so it was blocked, but I'm going to keep it. And then once it's done downloading, I'm going to click it and open it. And of course, it's probably going to go on another page. And then I'll just drag it over. So directly from a PC without ever touching your mainframe or signing on through an emulator or doing an FTP, you now have your Excel file. How cool is that? You can also do format PDF. Now let's see, is Laurie still here? Yes. All right, so here's your PDF output directly on the screen. Currently, it's in the viewer, but what you can do then is, I want to say download didn't work here. But in this case, I can go ahead and say app hold, sales, which means any of the hold files that I generate, I want to be physically permanent in the sales application. I'm going to change the PC hold to hold, and I'm going to call this car PDF. So I'm going to run that. Oop, what'd I do? On table hold as. So now if I refresh my file panel, notice in here now I have a car PDF, and then I can right click and download. Now I see it up here, I'm going to keep it, and then I can open it. Let's do quickly go into connect data or get data. So my DB2, I'm using DB2 CLI connection. So I can right click and do properties. So it tells me where my connection name, where I'm connecting to, what kind of security am I connecting using. Once I get everything the way I think it is, I can test it. And in this case, I have a good connection. What else? Let's go into this new procedure. So let's say I'm going to take out the hold and just go to the HTML on the screen. So again, if I run this, I see it this way, but then I can run it as folk. That's what this is, run, and then it's got a folk underneath it. Then it'll run it in what we call the green screen. So it's the same report, just a different way of viewing the output, which is what your current users are more accustomed to. And again, I can always go back and forth between the two. Let's say I add dcost, rcost. Well, notice I have this report window open, which has country car model, but then I can rerun it this way. I now see dealer cost, retail cost. So it's a good way where you can alternate between the different outputs from the versions so you can see how the report changed. I was talking about my create report or my create keys when I generate keys. So that is under my MF keys application. Create keys. So I can right click and say run it in Studio, but it's going to give me an error because I can't. It's doing things that Studio doesn't support. And this is kind of interesting because sometimes it takes a while and other times it just gives you the message immediately. And I think it's how I ran it. So I'm going to cancel that. Cancel that. Really want to cancel it. No, believe me. I'm gonna have to go to the console and cancel it. There we go, finally. But if I right click and run as folk, I get my CRT form. I'll put in a test customer. I do some validation. So again, you'll see in the white space what you would see in a sysprint. I didn't fully initialize properly, so let's change this. And then it comes back and says version must be a 4 characters and a valid version. But this is all my CRT form code is working, whether it's CRT form in Dialog Manager or CRT form within Modify. All right, what else did I say it would be good to have? All right, so the last thing I'm going to show, because we're getting out of time, is when you run this way, you're basically running a started task behind the scenes, which stays up and running, like WebFocus does. Focus itself does not have availability of a mail server, but Focus Studio does. So if I come over here under MF keys, I have a procedure called test mail. So I'm creating an XLSX file. I'm telling it that my files are in MF keys and IBI SAMP, and I'm going to hold to MF keys. And I'm going to create a hold file called my report. And let's call it my report FF for Focus Friday. And instead of Summit, I'm going to call it Focus Friday. And I probably need to put that in tick mark. And I'm going to create the report. Then I'm going to do this execute editmail, which is going to mail it to me from me with the subject Focus Friday. And then as an attachment, I'm going to attach my rep FF. Okay, let's run that. Fingers crossed. Okay, so far so good. And then maybe 20 minutes later, I'll actually get the email. So let me get to my email. Okay, still hasn't come in. Any minute now. Okay, so I have an email from me called Focus Friday. And inside of it, I have an attachment for my rep. Come on. And there's the preview. So hopefully there's something here that you think you can take advantage of. And if you want more information, just open a case, let us know. We'll set up a demo. If there's something specific you want to see. Again, it's part of your Focus product. So you're licensed for Focus, then you get Focus Studio. All right, that's it for me. Let's check the questions. Do you have all the same options for configuring the console for HTTPS that you would have on a WF? You have the majority of them. So another advantage of the Focus Studio is you have access to Java over on the USS side of the mainframe. So as long as you have Java configured, you can access any Java-based adapter, which opens things up for you. You just need to get the Java, the JDBC connectors from whatever database you're connecting to that can run on Unix. Nice. Some other things like if you have a Facebook or Facebook adapter, I don't believe we support those at this point in time. Okay. There was something Q&A. Lori, you're welcome. So I'm mentioning Lori because she's actively been going out and trying this so far. But again, if you're interested, graph file. Good point. Thanks, Alex. Alex is here to keep me on my toes. Let's see what I did with that. Doing a quick new procedure. Actually, I'm going to do in sales. I already have a chart set up. This chart code uses JS chart. Don't even think of trying this in Focus directly. Ta-da! Complete with your mouse overing to get more information. Thanks, Alex. Thank you, Mr. Blood. All right, I'm going to stop. Any other questions? Otherwise, we're going to wrap it up. You may run it. All right, so let's run this as Focus. I don't think this is going to work as Focus because I don't think we have all the JS chart stuff. I think we should just get our normal ASCII type of graph. Yep, there it is. So since this is rendered, so Alex, let's talk about this later because it would have been better if this was on the green screen and not in the messages. But again, this is much prettier. All right. Thanks for coming. Join us next next month. They seem like they come every weekly. We'll see you next month. I think it's on the 19th. We're going to try to do it in September. No, I don't know. It's going to be in September. We got the next 2 months already lined up. They should be on the website, hopefully either today or early next week, so you can start registering. And thanks everyone for coming. Hope to see you again next time.